Hello and welcome back to the John and Adrian podcast. If you're not yet subscribed, please subscribe. Comment what you think we should talk about the next episode. And right off the bat, something huge happened across the sports world since we last sat down and recorded an episode. The Milwaukee Bucks, followed by every NBA team and every other sports team or league that played on, was it Wednesday the 25th?
I think so,
yeah. Essentially sat out and did not play. Sports was essentially canceled for an entire day over the Jacob Blake incident in Michigan. And for those of you that know the situation that happened with Jacob Blake, that he was shot by police officers. So in response to that situation, the Milwaukee Bucks decided to sit out of their playoff game 5, I want to say, against the Orlando Magic, essentially setting in motion an entire league-wide shutdown for the following 2 days. And it was just, I don't know how else to explain it there. That's all I got.
Okay, so how do you feel about the players stop playing? What do you think it would mean for them if they decided to stop playing entirely? What do you think it would mean if they continue to play? I mean, personally, I'm not sure how not playing has any impact on the situation that they're talking about, right?
Right. The players,
I don't see how.
Yeah, the players want social justice and social change here in America. They want a better America, one where, people of color aren't afraid of the cops, right? Getting pulled over or getting arrested or anything doesn't end in essentially a death sentence.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those tricky things where you don't really know the right position to stand on. Well, the right thing is to fight for justice and equality, but it's you don't know how to pursue that. If you play, you have this platform after every game to say, I want this, this, and this. But if you do play, you're not able to go out into your community and fight for it. But if you stop playing, you lose that platform on national TV, but you gain the ability to go out into your community and build it up. So the players had those meetings to discuss what they wanted to do following the shutdown of the league on Wednesday night and Thursday morning. And I believe on the Wednesday night meeting, they had a team vote on whether or not they should continue playing. And the only two teams to vote against continue to keep playing were the Lakers and the Clippers, which I find interesting because I think those two teams are the best teams in a position to win the championship. So
and so make a voice out of this instance, right?
Yeah.
But I also think you got to look at the two LA teams, the two teams of the center of the Democratic Party and the voice of essentially the BLM movement, right? That's sparked in there. I believe BLM, the organization, is centered in DC or Jersey, somewhere over on the East Coast, but a lot of the movement is happening in places like Oregon and California. So I think,
and also Michigan, where a lot of
Michigan, and so I think you having a lot of, because the Bucks were the first team to sit out, right?
They were from my knowledge and my understanding of the situation, the Raptors and Celtics were discussing sitting out their second round games. But then the Bucks surprised everyone on Wednesday morning when they just didn't go out for warm-ups and practice. And then when the tip-off happened, or when it was supposed to happen, they just weren't out there, and they were in their locker room. And they were in their locker room all morning until they came out and gave their statement to the media and to the league. So
Okay. So see, I think that team and then the two LA teams are reflecting the beliefs that their regions have, that
Mm-hmm.
like those cities, I think the most are the ones that are the most progressive in
Yeah.
terms, especially in terms of this. So for them to choose to sit out is understandable, but also ironic
Mm-hmm.
because of the voice that they have and the abilities, the resources they're able to give to their communities by playing. Because I think one thing the players, the team is obviously the main factor of the organization, but it's not the only thing that's there, right? So the players could play and be like the publicity while PR or event organization, they do something else to help the communities on behalf of the organization itself. I think to multitask like that, especially when you're a big, obviously a big corporation like an NBA
Mm-hmm.
team, would be the best case scenario. So
Right.
I can understand where the player themselves are talking about like choosing between their platform or their time. But I think when you look at the organizations, they can do both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So ultimately, the league or the NBA decided to continue playing their games, continue playing their season, which in the moment, because for me, I was watching like the NBA network leading up to the Milwaukee Bucks deciding
Yeah.
to sit out their game, and I was just watching. I was like, oh, it's weird. They're not coming out.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't come out. So then all the games for that Wednesday were postponed. And a funny thing about that was I decided, you know what? The WNBA playoffs are also happening right now, and we've talked about the WNBA here, but we haven't really
Mm-hmm.
talked about the games. So I was like, you know what? I'll go watch one of their games. And when I flipped the channel, um, I watched as I don't think it happened as I was watching it, but I don't remember the teams that did this, but when I watched, the WNBA also decided to sit out Wednesday's games and I believe Thursday's games. I don't really know what happened with the WNBA, whether or not they're still going to continue, but I watched players from a WNBA team come out in shirts with a plain white shirts with 7 bullet holes in their
Mm,
backs, representing
yeah.
the 7 times that Jacob Blake got shot. Which that's a very strong and interesting message that I feel like they probably would have missed out on if they weren't there in that
Yeah.
situation. So that definitely showed that you know, um, shoot the man once, okay, but what reasons, what necessary reasons do you have for shot number 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
5, 6, 7?
And I don't know how it is in Michigan, but in here in California, you can't have more than 10 bullets in a single mag. So the officers likely unload. I mean, if I don't know, was it one or multiple officers? But if it was one, then
It
he
was,
nearly
yeah.
unloaded an entire magazine into Jacob Blake, which is excessive, especially if you think he is a threat. Then to single him out as the only threat is really stupid,
Yeah.
right? Like the way I understand it was he was in his getting in his SUV or
Yeah.
leaning in his SUV. So if there was someone else in there who was a threat,
It was his
then the
children
officer
in the
just made it.
car.
It was his children, but
Mm-hmm.
obviously the officer wouldn't know that. So to think of him as a threat and then to think that there's no one else in that car, I think is really like even from the perspective of the police officer, it doesn't make sense to do what he did.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, it's an open thing to be, or it's a very clear cut thing, where we we want better police out on the streets, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
this situation that happened there isn't okay, and we're in agreement with the NBA players in their message of wanting reform and wanting change and
Yeah,
equality for all. So it's just um, it's a heavy situation that I don't know how to continue on, but
we could segue into the arrogance and, I guess not, or ignorance
Oh,
of certain people who clearly don't understand this gravity of the situation that they're in. Chicago Bears recently distanced themselves from Hall of Famer Brian Urlacher after he tweeted, Brett Favre played the Monday Night Football game the day his dad died and threw 4 touchdowns in the first half and was a legend for playing in the face of adversity. NBA players boycott the playoffs because a dude reaching for a knife, wanted on a felony sexual assault warrant, was shot by police. So clearly, Urlacher is really poorly comparing Brett Favre's father's death and the game he played that day to NBA players should be playing in the playoffs, despite
the
this
death
a
or
dude, as Brian Urlacher said,
Mhm.
getting shot by police. So clearly, Brian Urlacher is not very well educated on the way things are now versus Brett Favre's situation. They are not nearly the same. I think it's interesting someone who has such a media presence would even think to tweet this in this way, especially like to be as insensitive as he was, even if he disagrees with
Right.
their choice, to just like simplify it down to a dude with a assault warrant on him being shot by police, I think is really wrong. And even if, like I said, even if you do think, you know, the NBA players should be playing, or even if you would go so far as to think the police officer was right, this isn't at all the right way to say it.
Yeah, Urlacher. Um, the way I found out about the Urlacher situation was interesting because I wasn't scooping news sources. I was just scrolling through Instagram and I saw someone burning an Urlacher jersey. And I was like, "Why is someone burning an Urlacher jersey? He's like one of the best."
Understandable.
I was like, well, one,
Yeah, out of
yeah,
context, that's really random.
like he's one of like the best Bears players, right? So then I looked up the Urlacher situation and realized he's really you're right. Like he was ignorant to say what he said, and like for the players, it's not just this one isolated instance.
Yeah, this is
It's
the most recent
of
many.
a line of incidents that really shouldn't be as long as it should be, right? Like there shouldn't be any more names added to the list of people
Yeah,
that already exist. So,
and I think that's where he gets off. That's where I think he's wrong comparing it to Brett Favre, because like eventually, I mean, Brett Favre's dad just died of old age, right?
I
I'm not
believe that's
missing
what it
anything.
was. Yeah.
So I mean, that's very different from being shot. I mean, I don't, especially being shot by law enforcement in the midst of what's happening now,
Mhm.
for something as natural as your father to pass away and you to be upset about it is very different than the current situation.
Which the Brett Favre situation is also fairly routine, I want to say, among
You hear a lot of stories of
professional
family members dying, and then the next game, the player plays incredible or something.
amazingly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I don't think it's the most recent, but the one I remember the most is the IT situation. Isaiah Thomas, I believe it was
Yeah.
his sister that died, and he literally just balled out.
Yeah. He played it great.
Which I mean, that's great to hear whenever a loved one passes away, and the player following that just
Yeah. They
has
like
an
dedicate
amazing
the game to them.
has an amazing game, which is not at all related to what the
Yeah.
NBA players
Like
are doing.
I'm thinking, is Brian Urlacher saying that they should dedicate the playoffs to this guy, Jacob Blake? Like, what is the point he's trying to make other than sports should keep going on? That's my thing. Is Brett Favre played that game for a reason? So unless Urlacher is going to propose a motive for the NBA players to play, given the situation, right? For like what what the WNBA did, for example, wearing the thing with the 7 bullets, right? I don't see Urlacher doing anything like that in this tweet. He's just being stupid.
Yeah, which I mean, it wasn't just the NBA that sat out showing their support for Black Lives Matter and the movement for equality and change in the country. It was also, I want to say, a bunch of MLB games were canceled or postponed because there's really no cancellations in the current MLB structure, because they physically cannot cancel games or their entire thing will be messed up. But like yesterday, the Dodgers canceled their game versus the Giants. Bunch of other, like two other, the Brewers and the Reds canceled their game. So it wasn't just the NBA and WNBA. They canceled games. I want to say the MLS also canceled games in support. So it wasn't just like, oh, basketball did this. Oh, well. It was like the whole sports world came together to show their support. Because it's like NBA players and like athletes, professional athletes, like it's not like so like the Jacob Blake situation, or really any other situation with the police, that could be someone's brother, sister, or brother, dad, uncle, grandfather, right? Like that, like, so maybe the NBA player or the professional athlete themselves might not have to deal with the police situation, but like they know like an uncle or a brother, you know, whenever they go back to their home, they have to then deal with that. So it's not just like an isolated incident. But I think we've kind of just move on from this and talk about the NBA games that we didn't talk about in last week's or on Tuesday's episode. We talked about the Sunday games, so the Monday and Tuesday games were the last games we talked, or that we didn't talk about. From those games, the Rockets Thunder, it's a tied series right now, so it's 2-2. The Bucks are up 3-1. The Heat closed out on the Pacers, which I don't know about you. We expected that outcome, mainly because the Pacers have just been terrible. And another story coming out of the Pacers is they fired their head coach, which I think is unfair. I don't know how he's been doing the previous seasons, but I feel like the Pacers team in this year's playoffs just didn't want to play. I don't know. Yeah, they just didn't look.
I don't know how long he's been the coach, but I know that essentially since Paul George left, they've been good as long as they have Victor Oladipo. Anyone else, if he's out, then they suck. But if he's in, then they look like one of the best teams in the East. So I don't know how long of a period he was coaching them then, but if your coaching scheme is built around your best player, I don't think that's necessarily a wrong form. Like if LeBron went down 2 years ago, then the Cavs would have been done. And
the Cavs were LeBron. The Cavs were LeBron, and if LeBron didn't play, then that was an L for the Cavs. So, the Clippers destroyed the Mavericks in a Game 5.
Yes, they did.
Which I don't. I think it was the big story out of that game was not only that the Clippers destroy, but I forget, because the Lakers have the other Maurice brother. Which one is on the Clippers? I forget their names. You know,
Morris?
Morris. The Morris brothers. The Lakers have the other one, right? Yeah. The Lakers have one. So. The Clippers have one. I just don't remember which one's which. Because they both don't get that much playing time. But or I guess he gets more playing time on the Clipper, that one. So Marcus, he stepped on Luka's foot in that game, and a lot of people, the story around that was, did he do it intentionally? Well, like, because that was Luka's hurt ankle.
Imagine Kawhi's teammate stepping on someone's foot.
Which, I mean, Marcus came out on social media saying that, like, his whole career, he's been like a honorable.
He's going to deny it.
Yeah, he's going to defend himself, but I think maybe looking back at it, he didn't want it to be intentional, but probably in the moment there was this thought of like, oh, I'm gonna hurt him. All their troubles are gonna be gone. So, and for some reason, Porzingis is still not playing. I get that he's injured, but it's like,
it's like
they're fighting. Luka's playing, right? Like they have a legitimate chance of winning if both of you, if you play and he's balling out. Like you guys could still win this and come back. You have to win the next 2 games, but if he plays, which I mean, I think,
like I said, I think it's gonna go to Game 7.
Mm-hmm.
Back and forth just works in the Clippers' favor.
So then also the Nuggets forced a Game 6 as well. They were down 3-1, so they won theirs, which I think if they somehow manage to force a Game 7, I don't know if they'll win it. I just haven't liked the way.
Winning 3 straight is very difficult, especially if it's the last 3.
Yeah, I don't like the Nuggets, or I do like the Nuggets, but it's like I don't see them pulling out.
Like them winning.
Right. The Lakers they've taken care of the Trailblazers and will most likely kill them in a Game 5 because Damian Lillard got sent out of the bubble, which they don't.
And that was their whole team. Basically.
That really was.
The only thing I think it's weird that the Bucks are the only team to not sweep in the East, and they're supposed to be the best team. Like I understand the Magic just steal that Game 1 every year, it seems like, or at least for the past 2 years. But I don't know. It's weird that all the other teams, like you'd especially think at least the Celtics 76ers game,
right,
or even the Miami Heat Pacers game, like one of those teams would have at least got 1 win. But so far it's 15-1 right now in favor of the Bucks of the top seeds.
Yeah,
it's just so top heavy, and even if you consider the bubble, that still shouldn't really be happening. So I think everyone called out LeBron for having a weak East, but when you look at it, there's obviously these aren't the same teams he played against, but the team core was essentially there. I think, as besides maybe Jimmy Butler, and obviously the Raptors weren't as good as they are now. And it's just interesting to see how top heavy it's like. LeBron leaves for 2 years, and suddenly half of that playoff bracket is good. But in the West, you still see 6 out of the 8 teams are very viable winners.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I still have faith in the Bucks. Like, I mean, I'm not as doom and gloom as you might be. I still see them destroying the Heat. Maybe not destroying, but like going 4-2 versus the Heat. I think the more interesting playoff matchup is going to be the Celtics Raptors, because I feel like they're both pretty even matched basketball teams, and teams that have a good shot at handling the Bucks. But yeah, the Lakers. Just to go back to the Lakers, Damian Lillard and I believe Aaron Gordon are the only 2 players to leave the bubble that are still technically in the playoffs. So, yeah, the Trailblazers are done for. That's all it is right there. And then I think that wraps up the playoffs, because there's really nothing has happened because of the
postponement.
Which
I think it's interesting. The schedule says that 6 games are postponed. The Bucks last game, the Rockets Thunder, the Lakers game, the Nuggets, the Clips,
it's 5,
the Mavs, and then the Celtics and Raptors game.
Oh,
they're all postponed. But then it still says all the other games tomorrow to be determined, Saturday 8/29 to be determined.
I think the growing belief around right now as we record this, and there might be still stuff that comes out on Friday when we release this episode, is that the Friday games will happen and will be played, but it's also just the uncertainty because maybe players decide something different is better. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's another interesting thing. Do you think what happened here in the NBA could happen in the NFL if like another situation like if nothing changes in the country and we still have the same situations that we're dealing with now in a couple months when the NFL starts up? Do you think the same situation could happen again?
I think like what Saquon and Sterling Shepard said about they'd be willing to sit out a game in protest. I think individual cases like that where players are going to sit out in response, but I don't think a team organization would sit out, even if like I could see maybe like let's say the Chiefs starters all say we're going to sit out, we're not going to play in response. Maybe then the Chiefs organization will say we're not going to play this next game. But if even if that were to happen, I think the NFL would say then you forfeit and your opponent gets the win.
Right.
I don't think the NFL gives the NFLPA as much power as the NBA gives its players association.
Right.
And so the NFL is a lot stricter and a lot more like you're going to do the rules and you're going to play by the rules. And if you don't, then you're going to be punished. It doesn't matter the situation. Because even when you look at instances like Tom Brady's cheating or over the cap salaries, right? Teams are punished. They lose. Tom Brady lost playing time. Teams lose draft picks. The NBA is a lot more lenient, even on minor things.
Right.
So when it comes to the big things, I think the NBA understands its fan base and player base, and the NFL says it doesn't matter. The NFL is saying we're a corporation, which is ironically a non-profit. They're a charity, but they have much stricter rules, and a big reaction like this, I think kneeling for the national anthem is as bad as it'll get. Set aside individual cases like Saquon and Sterling Shepard said they might do. I don't think on a large scale anything major will happen because I think the NFL won't respond as kindly as the NBA does.
Yeah, from what you just said, so if like the Saquon or someone were to sit out, right, or like the Chiefs' whole starting lineup, I think there is a high probability that maybe like if we're going to use the Chiefs for example, chances are if the NFL does levy like a loss or something against that organization, or maybe even cancellation of like their ability to enter the playoffs, they would probably hire scabs. I can definitely see that, like a game, because I believe in the late 80s there was an NFL lockout, and instead of handling it with the Players Association, they just decided to, or not an NFL lockout, or is that the right term?
I don't know. The players stopped playing.
The players stopped playing and they were protesting, and the NFL just hired scabs, right? Yeah. So I think there is that precedent of the NFL just being more or less player friendly.
Yeah.
So
because even look at like for years, like players have been trying to wear certain gear to like express the charities or the issues that they want to express on like their cleats or their gloves or something. The NFL is like, okay, you can do that in pregame warmups, but you're not going to go on the field during the game wearing that, or you're not going to wear that during your press conferences or whatever, right? You're going to look professional and be business-like. If you want to do those things, then October we have the one cancer game. I think they have another one later in the year where you can pick a charity you want.
It's very handpicked.
It's handpicked. There's like 2 or 3 games a year where you get to do that, and that's it. There's no other option. Even like I think Odell got fined like $200K for wearing a watch during a game to see the time. Like it didn't even have anything on it. It was just a watch. So I think
it was an iced out watch, and it was too icy.
Like if the NFL won't even let players have their voice in terms of cosmetics, I definitely don't think they'll tolerate any form of protesting.
So this goes to the NFL being a bad boy organization, the Dan Snyder situation. So before the Washington football team has really gone through it, they've been put through the ringer. And a couple weeks ago, the Washington football organization was hit with accusations of treating their cheerleaders poorly. And that's me saying that in a very nice and not giving too much detail. But recently, Dan Snyder himself has been accused of, an NFL organization takes a lot of footage behind the scenes, and they just have like a film crew following certain players and coaches around. But Dan Snyder allegedly had that film crew follow around cheerleaders for his own personal use.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
You're going to do this, but you're also going to do this in your free time.
Yeah. So, and I believe he addressed it. I don't know how well, but I think for my personal beliefs here, I think Dan Snyder should be taken out of the league because the product he's put on the field and it's been terrible. And the amount of controversy that he's surrounded by, and just like, he's a terrible owner. I don't know how the NFL can handle him.
Statement. This is essentially Dan Snyder's statement. It's the statement from the Washington football team. As of yesterday, it says, today, the Washington Post published an article detailing additional allegations of sexual harassment and other misconduct at the Washington football team. We're deeply distressed by these terrible allegations, yada, yada, yada. We're committed to creating a culture where our employees on and off the field are respected and empowered. Our first concern is safety and security of teammates. And he goes on, the statement goes on, and they tweeted this out, right, in response. And every single comment is just hashtag sell the team. That is no one in any way is like, oh, maybe we need Dan Snyder to change. We need to have a talk with, because I think you can't in the NFL get rid of the owner, as far as I know.
Right.
Can the other owners vote out an owner?
Well, how did the Panthers get rid of their owner? Didn't he just sold? Okay, so he got out on his own. Because what did he do? He said a naughty word.
With it anymore.
Right? He said a naughty word, right?
Go to Papa John's.
Was it a naughty word, or was it what Snyder said, or like what Snyder's alleged of doing? It was one of those two, right?
Yeah.
He either said a naughty word or he did some naughty things with his hands. So he sold the team. So then, I think in the NFL you can't fire the owner.
He pulled a Papa John's.
Oh, what did Papa John's do? Oh, he said a naughty word. Okay, he said a naughty word. He said a naughty word, and a word that starts with the letter N.
See anymore? Peyton Manning.
Oh, Papa John's. Oh God.
But so that's what the Panthers owner did. Dan Snyder's is different. Because I think you look at the two main movements right now. One's for women, one's for African Americans. And I think currently the women's movement is taking a back seat to the black movement, like BLM, Black Power. And I think Daniel Snyder's incidents, they keep stacking up, but they aren't doing anything. And especially when you look at the other owners, it's like, why would they care, right? The fact that the Washington Redskins, or the Washington football team, is in shambles just benefits their team. Why would they want?
Right. Look, we're not that team. We're better by our stuff. So, yeah. So
as long as Daniel Snyder is the bottom, every other owner can say, at least I'm not Dan Snyder.
Right. So,
because I remember this incident happening with Jed York for the Niners owner a couple years ago, when they went 2-14. A reporter asked them, do you think there needs to be a change in leadership and management? And Jed York just goes, you can't fire the owner. It's not happening.
Yeah.
So that question's irrelevant.
Yeah,
I think Dan Snyder has the same
mentality
response.
Yeah, I think NFL owners as a whole are just bad people.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe there's some good owners.
Going to risk, even if they could vote themselves out, I don't think they would do it.
Right. There's just some.
That puts all of them at risk.
Yeah, NFL owners are just shady people as a whole.
The scum of the earth. They're the definition of um the meme of eat the rich. I think
Yeah.
that's who we're talking about. We're talking about NFL owners.
Yeah, they're bads. There's nothing you can do about it either. It's just they have money.
It's just stuck.
They bought the
Which I
team.
think is interesting when you look at an owner like Dan Snyder, like Jerry Jones, who gets criticized probably more than any other owner, even Dan Snyder, is such a significantly better businessman and even like person. Like when you look at the things that he does, like yeah, he's kind of arrogant and big headed, but he's not racist or a pervert, at least not publicly, right?
Hmm.
Like those are things you people would think. Like when you look at Jerry Jones and the things he does, you kind of think those things, but he hasn't done them publicly. So he hasn't pulled a Donald Sterling either. So these like he got into the Hall of Fame too. Like he is like the poster boy of what an NFL owner is. And I think it's really ironic considering how much people hate him and yet he is not even close to being the worst owner.
I think NFL ownership is just weird because like in the NBA, you see the changing of ownership between like teams and stuff happens a lot more frequently. I feel like if like an NFL or NBA team starts tanking or like doing bad, they sell. Like they're
Yeah.
the NFL, the NBA owner is just out. In the NFL, you have dynasties of owners like the Bears and the Lions that are just there, and like fan bases are like, please sell the team, please. You have no idea what you're doing.
Like, the Panthers owner who sold, I think he was one of the youngest ones. He only owned the team for 23 years. Like that's he owned it for less than he didn't have ownership in the 90s, which
Right.
is very rare among NFL owners, I feel like. To not own the team before 2000, I don't think there's very many NFL owners who can say that they're that young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like once it's like like other sports leagues. I have this feeling of it's like you buy the team as like an investment that you sell in 10 years. NFL, this is you. You are the team now. Like there's no like selling it in 10 years, which I mean they could do, but it's like it just doesn't happen in the NFL.
The difference is in NBA teams and other sports leagues, you make your profit when you sell, right?
Mhm.
Owning the team,
Yeah.
especially if it's a bad team, isn't when you make your money. It's when you sell it that you make your money. Because unless you're going to rebuild that team into a good team, you're going to just be stuck with it.
Right.
Whereas you look at the NFL, it's like even if your team's bad, you make
a cut.
So much money off
you get a cut.
You get a cut of everything, especially considering the NFL being a non-profit. I'd imagine they make more money than NBA teams do. So you can hold it longer and be bad.
I think there was when the NFL was going through its player negotiations, and they were discussing an increase to the players' like revenue, like the player revenue share. I think they were talking about increasing from, I want to say like 47% to like 48.5% of like the revenue share going to players if they increase to 17 games a year. And it came out to be something like the NFL makes $32 billion a year, like the total. And so they make an ungodly amount of money, which I don't have the exact numbers. I'm just trying to remember the article off the top of my head. But it's like 1% of the year, or like 1%, like a 1% revenue share increase in the favor of the players equals like $32 billion a year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, wow, that is a lot of money that the players are just, or the owners are just splitting amongst themselves. Yeah, the owner's bad. That's what we got out of this. Flipping over back to the NBA though, the Defensive Player of the Year came out. Do you know who it was?
No.
Antetokounmpo won Defensive Player of the Year. He won it by a wide margin. The next closest player, like I have the exact voting results in front of me. He won over Anthony Davis and Rudy Gobert, but it wasn't even close. Like he was the clear cut, like consensus. Like he had 200 more points than Anthony Davis, which I don't. I guess maybe that maybe I'm assuming he got this award because he didn't get the MVP award, and this was like the pity vote of like well, we didn't give him the MVP. I don't know. I don't think that's come out yet. Which I'm assuming is most likely LeBron because he balled out this season. Also, I think there was that one news reporter lady that came out and said that she voted for LeBron because she just likes the story of LeBron getting the MVP. So I feel like a lot of people that vote are probably have the same mindset as her, and so Antetokounmpo getting the Defensive Player of the Year in my mind lines up pretty well with LeBron getting the MVP. Like, if he gets snubbed with the MVP, he's more likely to get another award just to be nice. Still on the NBA subject, the 76ers fired their head coach, which long time coming in my opinion.
He fire some players too.
I mean, they're probably going to trade out everybody out of that Sixers building. It is. I don't know. Like,
it's just bad.
I don't know how they mess up the situation that they had or they have. Like every year, they have Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons as like the core two players on their roster, but they trade out and swap out the rest of their 12 spots. That's or 11 spots, I think, because you can only have 13 players on NBA roster. 13. So they swap out their 11 other players every single season, and it's like, I don't know how you think you're going to have sustained success if you keep swapping out.
Even when certain players, like Jimmy Butler, I think, was the most successful that team had ever been.
Right.
He bullied Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. They didn't like it, so they got rid of him. Which I think is a very petty remark to make, because, like, if he's winning and he's not, I mean, he wasn't doing it to be mean. He was doing it to make them better, right?
Right.
They were getting whatever they wanted. Like Jimmy Butler was there to say, you shouldn't eat this food because you're going to get a tummy ache tomorrow, Joel. You can't play in the game like that.
Joel, you can't be eating 10 burgers before a basketball game as your body's a temple. You can't do that. And it's like, I want to eat my hamburger. You mean, you bully me.
You have that guidance, essentially, and then you throw it out. I don't see how you can expect any success coming out. Especially looking at the Heat. Like, the Heat dominated the season and the playoffs.
Was it but I think that's just the mentality, because Jimmy Butler in my mind is like an old player, even though like he's part of the Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan school of thought of like toughen up, Buttercup, which is a very new NBA players can't handle, as you can see with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Which that brings me to I want to say who was the bust that played with Michael Jordan. He was drafted to the, I forget his name. It wasn't. Oh, was it? What was his name? He was like the first overall pick. Say what you're gonna say. I'm just gonna look this up.
I was gonna say, look at the three biggest players in the league today. I'd say it's probably LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant. Right? Giannis is close, but I don't think I'd put him over any of those three right now. And you look at, even if you did include Giannis in there, Giannis is like fun, and I just want to enjoy playing basketball. LeBron James completely ignores any criticism given to him. I feel like he focuses on himself and ignores the negativity, right? You look at Kawhi Leonard, he's the robot, right? Same thing as LeBron. And you look at Kevin Durant, who's the thinnest person I've ever met, both literally and figuratively. Like, he can't take any sort of criticism whatsoever. So when you look at the faces of the NBA versus Jimmy Butler's play style, and look at how the faces of the NBA are winning still, right? Like, all four of those players I mentioned have success. So mentality like Jimmy Butler's is seemed not only as negative but unnecessary, when in reality it's because those players kind of have internalized Jimmy Butler's mindset that they're able to succeed. They don't outwardly, maybe they aren't criticizing their teammates the way Jimmy Butler does, but they're making sure that they criticize themselves enough that they're able to carry a team. Whereas Jimmy Butler is kind of like, I'm good and I know that you guys can, because I feel like Jimmy Butler going into the 76ers had the mentality that he could make Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid better than him, and that they weren't willing to work to get to that point. And so he didn't want to play with them anymore, and them not with him either. So I think it's interesting that Jimmy Butler is kind of the outward emotion that you need to have internalized to be a good player. And Jimmy Butler is kind of like trying to share it with his teammates. And up until the Heat, no other team, I think, received it very well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was very, Jimmy Butler is just very, just cold person, right? I found the player I was talking about. Kwame Brown. Kwame Brown. I don't know if that name means anything to you.
Mm-mm.
But he does to me. He was drafted first overall in the 2001 NBA draft. So he was the first overall pick to the Charlotte Hornets, I believe. Or no, not the Charlotte Hornets. No, the Wizards. The Wizards. He was drafted first overall to the Wizards. And if you don't know about the Wizards, in 2001, it was Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan's return. And so Kwame Brown came into the league with playing with like one of the, well, Michael Jordan at the time wasn't, the best. He wasn't at his peak physical basketball playing career. Obviously, he shouldn't have came back, but he was, and he was playing like Michael Jordan played. Like aggressive, or he had the mindset of like, I'm the best. Get good or get out, which is LeBron has that same thing of like, he's a team manager. If he doesn't like you, you're getting traded. So he not only had to deal with Michael Jordan, but then when he was done playing with Michael Jordan, he went on and played with Kobe, which is the same. Like, you're gonna be a good player, you get good. If you don't like it, you can get out. So Kwame Brown never had the supportive, I love you, son. So like, he was different. Like, he would have done better in today's NBA of like babying players and being nice to players. Definitely Joel Embiid of his time, but not good. He never flourished into a good basketball player. Mm. That's all I have.
Do you have anything else to add
to
this podcast episode? Because I've covered everything, I think.
Yeah, we have some other things. Buda Baker getting the biggest safety contract known to man. He got paid. He's getting an extension for 4 years, $59 million, which I do my maths right. I think I want to say it's $15 million a year.
4 year, $59 million.
Yeah, so around 15.
Yeah. 14.25.
Yeah, something like that. So that's the biggest contract ever for a safety, which I'm surprised because there's definitely other safeties out there in the league right now that should be making more. Which
was he even like? Was this? And is he a free? Was he going to be a free agent, or was he a free agent now? Like, I don't understand what got him the contract, especially right now, given how uncertain the season and cap are.
I don't know. All I know is that I think he is the highest. He's not only the highest like safety contract, he's also the highest ever contract for a safety that has yet to record a single interception. So there's that going for him, which, I mean, that's not his role on the team. You know, his role is not to get interceptions, but still, if you're playing like,
it's a staple stat for that position.
Right. So there's definitely like there's safeties out in the market right now. Like when Earl Thomas, there's Logan Ryan, which he's a corner, but he's marketed himself as a safety to NFL teams, which I'm surprised he's still out on the market. I'm surprised Jadeveon Clowney's still out on the market, for that matter, actually. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I don't think he signed with anybody.
I thought he finally settled.
No, I think he's still.
He hasn't. Right.
Yeah, which I in my mind he's never been like a. Well, he's a good defensive lineman, but he's never been the like. Whenever
second to JJ Watt.
Right. Like whenever I hear people talking about him, they're like, "Oh, he's this unstoppable like lineman force," but I'm like, no. You know, he's good, but like he's not like on the same level as like a healthy JJ Watt or a somewhat worse Aaron Donald, right? Like he's never been in that tier for me. He's been like he's been in the good tier or above average tier. But he's still not out, so he still doesn't have a team, so that's interesting. But Budda Baker got his money. He got the bag, which when people were reporting that's literally what every person said in their like tweet or their story about him getting the money. They're like, he secured the bag. Which given I think Jamal Murray is most likely gonna reset the safety market whenever he gets his contract. I don't know any other high profile safeties that could get more money than
him. I could see Minkah Fitzpatrick as a free agent next year. I think he could pull off a big contract. And if what's his name? The other young safety. I'm looking at him right now. So Tyron Harrison Smith and Earl Thomas are the other big ones. But there was a young safety. I think it's the Bills safety.
Oh,
either Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, but I don't know I don't remember his name.
It's one of them. It's Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer. But that entire defense played very well, and I think either of them could pull off a very big contract, depending on how they play this season. But I also think it's interesting. Look at a team look at Budda Baker, right? Like he's at best, like if you were to make a top, like I think on the top 100, he's 97 or 98, something down there. And I don't know where he is ranked on the safeties. I expect he's like 6 or 7, maybe 8, and that's like best case scenario, right? Like looking at all the safeties in the league and how they performed, I think Budda Baker is at best barely making the top 10. Right. When you look at someone like Jadeveon Clowney at his position, I think you can make a very strong case he is top 5 outside linebacker. I wouldn't put him necessarily at edge, which I think is his problem. He's trying to get paid like Khalil Mack or Von Miller, and he's not even that style of player, right? They're pass rushers, and he is very much more a run stopper. So when you look at someone like that, like his play style, I am surprised Budda Baker got paid as much as he did when a player like Jadeveon Clowney, who's playing a much more important position and plays at a higher level at his position than Budda Baker got paid or hasn't gotten paid yet. So I think there might be some other reason that teams are not leaning towards him besides production or money.
I'm looking at some of the free agents that are still available, And the Lions DN, or the old Lions DN, Ziggy Azaya is still a
Ziggy
free.
Ansah.
Yeah, he's still a free agent.
Because he hasn't done anything for the last like 4 or 5 years. I think the last year he did something was, I want to say 2015 was the
Right,
last year he was
right.
relevant, and he hasn't been relevant because of injury since
Mm-hmm.
then. So I don't think a team is gonna, like, the last 5 years you haven't played because of injury. We're not gonna sign you.
So yeah, you're right about that, but it's like it's still interesting. There's still actually
So you look, the Cowboys signed Alden Smith, but you can't sign Ziggy Ansah. I think
right,
that's a good way of looking at it.
right. It's odd, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you have like Jadeveon Clowney, which should be signed, but I think his problem might be that he's asking for too much money.
Yeah, he's asking to be, I think, the highest paid, or one of the highest paid linebackers in the league, which I don't think.
Which I think he'd make more money if he tried to be a lineman. I think linemen get paid more. Which, I mean, if he's trying to be the highest paid linebacker, I guess teams can afford that a little bit better than, like DeAnd or whatever. Which, since Earl Thomas got released, he's one of the highest rated free agent safeties behind like Logan Ryan. That says he can play safety.
Earl Thomas's history, though, I think a lot of teams are hesitant to go for him because since he left Seattle, basically,
right,
including his departure from Seattle, he's just caused a lot more problems than he's worth, especially when you look at his quality of play has gone down a little bit with age.
Yeah, he's definitely had a interesting offseason, which, I mean, if you remember his story from a couple, I'm going to say months ago, I don't know how long ago this was, but I think his top landing spot is the Eagles because, as we all know, Philadelphia is the city for brotherly love. So I think that's a perfect spot for him. Oh, you don't get it?
I don't get it. I remember his story about his wife. And
he was with his brother. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he was with his brother when he got caught. So, brotherly love. It's a great joke.
Yes, I remember that. I remember that now.
It's a great joke
you talked about, like, that's a weird thing to be doing with your brother.
Yeah, it's a very weird thing to be doing with your brother. It's one thing, it's a bad thing to be doing that thing to begin with, but like with your brother, it's like, I don't know. Whatever. Cool. Good for you. Josh Gordon is still available, which I think he might be.
And the Seahawks released him?
Yeah, he's not with the team, but I think it's... Well, the Seahawks were forced to release him because he got caught doing the marijuana.
Again.
Which this was during the season. So he's kind of in uncertain waters, but since the NFL has like laxed their policy on the marijuana, I think he has a better shot of coming back. Devontae Freeman is a free agent still. Delaney Walker, he's old, but he's still a free agent. Clay Matthews, he's old. Oh, Trumaine Johnson's a free agent. I remember that name. Wow. That's crazy.
He fell off and then he left the Rams.
Yeah, he was one of the top corners with the Rams, and then the Rams didn't want to pay him, so he got his money with the Jets, and now he's a free agent.
The Jets have a bad habit of paying formerly good players a lot of money.
They do. They really do. Darius Geist is a free agent, which if you think he can still be a good running back, I bet you can get him from the salary minimum.
Think of the longevity. I don't even think he's taken a major hit in his life. He had him for so many years.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm just looking at the I found this list of the top 350 free agents. I'm looking at it and it's like these are a bunch of old players that played for teams that like they probably should be on a roster, but it's like they're either past their prime
Mm-hmm.
or it's like
They're probably going to get signed later in the season. Like
when someone gets
injuries.
injured. And like Aqib Talib, if a corner goes down, he'll probably get picked up. But like he's definitely past his prime. Vontaze Perfect. Dude, he's he's not. He's probably never gonna get picked up again. Mainly because, I mean, I like Vontaze Perfect. I don't know about you.
I don't like him because I don't think he's very good. I think he's average as a linebacker, and so it's not worth dealing with all the extra stuff.
Right. Terrell Suggs is a free agent. Alex Ogletree is a free agent. Clay Matthews is a free agent.
I like Ogletree. He's
I like him too.
Favorite players. It might be because he's really good in Madden. I'm not sure. I think I can't honestly say that I've ever watched one of his games all the way through and noticed him too much besides a Niners-Rams game.
Yeah.
But I definitely I remember him. I think he had a pick six when he played the Rams when he first signed the Giants. I think he intercepted Jared Goff. I think and that was a pretty good play.
Yeah,
but that's the other thing is like it's random little highlights that you remember of him. I don't think he's a very consistent player.
Yeah, I liked
based off what I know about him.
I was mad when the Rams got rid of him. But I remember the situation. It was like he was taking up too much money, and the Rams were getting ready to pay like Todd Gurley, Aaron Donald, and they just picked up Jared Goff. So it's like, well, in a year or two, they're gonna have to pay him. So it's like, Alec Ogletree just wasn't worth the money, or wasn't like his contract was like bad. So, I mean, I liked him. I thought he was a good player. Yeah, there's not much you can say about him because he's just one of those players where it's like, oh, I liked him.
I don't pick you up in Madden.
Yeah.
I don't expect me to watch your games.
I liked you, which, I mean, that's something we're going to talk about at a later time, the state of NFL teams.
I think it's interesting when you look at teams or players kind of get hyped up based off how they might perform in like one game. Or even I think Madden has a huge influence on it, which it really shouldn't. Madden is the most useless way to keep track of how good a player is.
Right.
If you look at Madden, I remember there was a time in the game where Ryan Shazier, Alec Ogletree, and Deion Buchanan were the three best linebackers in the game. And it wasn't because any of them were good. Ryan Shazier was a rookie, I think. So he wasn't good yet. Alec Ogletree was inconsistent. Deion Buchanan was inconsistent. They were the three fastest linebackers in the game. So you could cover anyone, anywhere on the field. And so they got like hyped up a lot in Madden. And then that actually did translate into the actual season. And I think Buchanan made the top 100. And I don't think Alec Ogletree ever did. I don't think Ryan Shazier did his rookie year. But I do think Deion Buchanan did. And a lot of announcers in NFL, like media guys, were talking about how underrated those three players were. And I said, and in my head, I'm like, they're not underrated. They're not that good to begin with. They just perform well in these very niche situations on the field, where they have to cover a tight end or something, or in Madden, which is like not at all the way you should be keeping track of your players.
Yeah, we're gonna be wrapping up here soon, but I just wanted to ask you this last question. When did Ryan Shazier get hurt? Was it his junior season?
It was like 3 years ago, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't keep track of his career that much. I wouldn't know.
He was drafted in 2014. And he was injured December 4th, 2017.
Okay. So that's what, his sophomore, junior season? I don't know.
So if you're in the 2014 draft, then that means you play the 2014 season, the 2015 season, 2016. So he got hurt his fourth year.
Okay. So yeah, he was his contract year, huh?
Yeah. Which, I mean, you look probably he would have signed. Yeah, I think it was. He would have signed the extension at the end of the season. But because of his injury, he's kind of just, his contract's paused, I think, right now, because he was on injured reserve the whole time. And So he's kind of been stuck where he is. But when you look at, I mean, this will be 7 years, I think.
Oh wow.
And that's a
Yeah.
long time to be into. Like, he's aging for a linebacker right now. And when you consider the injury, I don't think he'll
Yeah,
ever
no.
return.
Yeah, he's done playing football. Which, I mean, I think there was that belief there for a while that he could come back, but I don't think he can. There's nothing against him. I just don't think that.
Yeah. He's 27 right now, and he'll turn 28 on September 6th.
Yeah. I mean, well, there's still like Clay Matthews and stuff running around, but it's like with his.
But he's played inside linebacker, and his gameplay is really built off speed. And I think the Steelers drafting Devin Bush last year was the sign that they're moving on from Ryan Shazier. They're not going to count on him anymore.
Which they really shouldn't, because, you know, he's injured goods. Which, I mean, there's nothing that's not like against him. He was a good player for when he played, but like, you know, it's just,
I liked him.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do when you get injured that bad. And
I like Bo Jackson, but I can't blame the Raiders for not keeping him around.
Right, like he was good for when he played, but it's like the moment he got injured, which I think nowadays, if he would have gotten injured, he would have been back within the next season. But it's like,
no, so his injury is unique. The only other player I know of to have the same injury as Bo Jackson is Tua Tagovailoa.
Right.
Whereas it affected so much of the leg and the hip, especially. I don't know whether or not he'll be. I think Tua, if he comes back, will be.
Which he is. I think
I don't want to say a good example, but you also have to look at Bo Jackson playing versus Tua. Tua's a quarterback, and yeah, he runs. But Bo Jackson was built on speed and power. He was like one of the best combinations of speed and power the NFL has ever seen.
Yeah, so but my whole point,
injury to hit him, I don't know if he would have been able to come back.
But my whole point with it is like, it wouldn't have been like a whole season-ending injury. Bo Jackson probably could have came back within 2 years and like played a season or two and realized, oh, I'm not as good as I was or whatever. But like, he still would have been able to come back from it. You know, it wouldn't have been this.
I see what you're saying.
Oh, it's the end of Bo Jackson. You know.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we're gonna end the show there. Thank you for listening. Have a good one, y'all.